This summer, we are thrilled to unveil a series of 5 captivating outdoor recreation programs, each shining a spotlight on the remarkable plants and animals that inhabit El Rio's riparian oasis. Immerse yourself in the enchanting worlds of birds, bats, dragonflies, lizards, and even enjoy a beautiful nature walk. Join us on a journey of exploration, learning, and appreciation for the wonders of nature at El Rio Preserve this summer. For more information, visit maranaaz.gov/recreation.
Do you have a favorite place to eat in Marana? I know I do. We'd love to have you tell us about that place and nominate them for the Taste of Marana Standout Award. This Discover Marana program shines a spotlight on the great food businesses in Marana that make our community a better place and more attractive to tourists. We hope you'll join us in making this program a success and spreading the word about the amazing food businesses in Marana and nominate today. Head to discovermarana.org and search Taste of Marana for a link to the nomination form and to read about the previous winners.
Welcome to Real Talk with the Town, where I sit down with Marana staff to answer your burning questions about our beautiful community. My name is Terry Rozema, and I'm the town manager for the town, so let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Talk with the Town. My name is Terry, and I am your host, and today we're going to be talking about elections. Kind of appropriate since they're right around the corner, and today we have back in the studio for a second time now our very own Town Clerk and Attorney for the Town, David Udall. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Terry. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming in and talking about this. It's an important topic, and one we don't give a lot of thought to until the elections come around. And they are right around the corner, as I said. So we're going to get into that, but we'll get into that in a minute. By way of an icebreaker, curious, I mean, you have a few kids, right, David?
Just a few, yeah.
Yeah. What are you up to, like 5 now? 5,
yes.
Five kids. But I heard not that long ago that you had an addition to the family, in addition to the 5 that you have. Tell me about this addition to the family.
That's correct. Yeah. So we got, for the first time, we got a dog.
First time. So your kid, your oldest son, your oldest is a boy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And he's how old now?
He's 14 now.
It has gone 14 years without a puppy?
Kind of. You know, he's had some fish and other stuff.
Okay, so you had Nemo and and whatever other name fish you have, but you got a puppy.
We did, yes.
Wow.
It's been wonderful. Yeah, they've loved it.
It's been wonderful. Okay.
Yep, they finally won us over.
Well, they outnumber you now.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, and everybody's taking good care of her, taking the responsibilities of cleaning up after her and going for walks and all that.
They are. They're doing outstanding. Probably taking too good care of her, to be honest. She's a little bit spoiled.
She's spoiled. Okay.
But she's great.
Well, that's awesome. It's always good to have a dog in the house, man and people's best friend, I guess.
For sure.
So they say.
Agreed.
But we're here to talk about elections. So let's talk about elections, and let's talk specifically about the town's role in elections. So what role do we play in the elections for town? Well, let me actually back up a little bit. What actual positions in the town do we have elections for? Let's start there.
Yeah, that's a good question. So thank you, Terry. In Marana, we've got a governing body of 7 elected officials. 6 of them are council members. One of them is mayor. That's a separate elected office. Together, they comprise the kind of the governing body that decides town matters, sets town policy, and things like that.
Okay. And they meet how often?
Under our town code, they meet twice a month. They have regular council meetings the first week, the first Tuesday of the month, and then the third Tuesday of the month. And then they have special meetings or study sessions, in between those weeks as needed.
Okay. And so let me ask you this. With the elections, each one of them are elected positions, right? And so tell me how the elections for those 7 positions go. Do we elect them all in one fell swoop? Do they have minimum terms or not?
Yeah, so the elected officials for the town of Marana, they are staggered. So you have the mayor this year, you have the mayor position that is up for election. And then you have 2 council seats that are also up for election.
So 3 total positions of the 7.
Yep, 3 this year. The elections occur in Marana every 2 years on even numbered years.
Okay.
And so in 2026, the remaining 4 council members would be up for election at that point in time.
Okay. So 3 and 4 comprising our 7. And do we have any term limitations? Do they get to serve like 1 term? They get to serve like 4 terms? I mean, is it like the president? You get 2 terms and you're out? How does that work?
No, actually, there are no term limitations for town officials. They do serve 4-year terms, so every 4 years. Again, on that staggered basis, they would be up for re-election.
Okay.
But there isn't a term limit in Marana.
Okay. I heard one council member tell me recently, every 4 years you have to re-audition for your job.
Yep.
So that's kind of the way it is, right?
That's kind of the way it is.
You got to go back out there, put up the signs, go out there and canvass and do all that every 4 years.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate.
Okay. So who is the primary office responsible for ensuring that the elections are carried out properly, appropriately, according to law, all of those things?
Yeah, so the town clerk's office is responsible for administering elections in the town. The town clerk is the elections officer for town-related election matters. So that includes candidate elections. It includes town-related ballot initiatives, recalls, referendums, all those types of things.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this, David. You went to law school.
I did.
Yeah. And you graduated from law school.
Yes.
And my guess is, knowing you did really well in it. I won't ask you your GPA or anything like that. But did you ever see yourself, David, when you were in law school, think one day I'm going to be a town clerk?
Not at all.
Okay.
I did have an interest in election law. In fact, I wrote a substantial paper on an election-related topic and worked at the Secretary of State's office back in 2012, but had no clue that I would ever be an elections official or the town clerk.
Okay. So what is your specific role then in the elections? What is it a really daunting thing when this rolls around every 2 years? Is there lots of questions and consternation and battles going on? I mean, kind of describe that for our listeners.
Yeah, so it kind of starts the year before the election year. So we take several months the year before ramping up for the election. We prepare a candidate handbook. We go through and make sure that all the new laws are accounted for. Everything's up to date. All the deadlines are up to date. Election law is very, very deadline driven. And then after that, once kind of the nomination season kicks off, that's when our office gets pretty heavily involved. So we answer, if candidates have questions about what is the number of valid signatures I need to get on the ballot. We provide them all that information. They file a statement of interest with us, with the clerk's office. We review that. They need to have that in before they can really start collecting valid signatures. Then once they have their signatures collected and the nomination petitions compiled, we're the ones that review that. So we go through and review the nomination petitions and the associated filings, the nomination paper, the financial disclosure statement. And then once, if we determine that, they've collected enough valid signatures, then we will go ahead and certify that they can be on the ballot. The county is actually the organization that prepares the ballots and counts them for us. So we've contracted that responsibility out to the county. They have the expertise. They have the manpower. They've been doing it for a long time. So we kind of contract that out to them so that they can kind of handle the actual ballot handling in our behalf for the town. Okay. Once they're done, then we kind of take it from there. We'll review the canvass of the election results for town officials and present that before the town council. We prepare certificates of election for the council members and then ultimately swear them in once the process has been completed.
Okay, David, so you gave kind of an A to Z answer to that, which I greatly appreciate. But I'm going to go back and kind of break some of this down. Number one, you said that the county kind of takes over at a certain point, and they do the counting of the ballots and all of that.
That's correct.
So one thing that's kind of out there is like election integrity, right? And people have questions about, is it a fair thing? Is it an accurate thing? So you've had actually quite a bit of experience in this, and you and I have had several discussions about this. And so, what is your take on that? When you talk about, do you have great faith and confidence in Pima County and what they've been doing over the years and what how they've counted the ballots and reported those and everything? What's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Terry. I've had the opportunity.
I like that answer. Absolutely. I like that.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to tour their facility, to go through and see how they do what they do. It's pretty extensive. The checks and balances that are there, pretty much almost at every stage of the process, you got to have someone from both parties, major parties, whether it's opening a ballot or whatever the case may be. They've got cameras everywhere. People can go in and observe if they wish. They've got election observers from parties there. They have, individuals coming in as poll workers. They have to train them, and they have to go through so many different checks and balances to ensure that the results are accurate. And then there's procedures for, if there are questions or concerns. There's recount triggers. There's things like that. Both my time kind of observing there and also my time at the Secretary of State's office and seeing all the checks and balances they have to go through. It is very, very extensive. It really bolstered my confidence in the election process. And I would highly recommend if anyone has questions about election integrity, feel free to take a tour, and really see what they do. And I know, at least for me, there's a lot of takeaways for me of how in-depth that process really is.
I appreciate that answer so much. I appreciate the depth of it and kind of your own personal experience with it as well. So now I want to jump back even a little bit further in your initial response and talk about the process which people go through to actually get their names on the ballot. So they have to submit an interest. So do we have a lot? We have like 100 people that were interested in being council members. How many people were interested in being the mayor or being a member of the council?
Yeah, so it depends on the year. The last election cycle, there were 7.
Okay.
For 4 positions.
Okay.
This election cycle, we have 2 different positions open. So the mayoral seat and 2 council member seats. So far, there's been 1 interest in the mayoral seat, and that is the incumbent. So far, meaning
there could be another, or
no? So the nomination period is closed.
It's closed. So we have 1 person that is running to be mayor. So they just automatically win. They don't have to go on the ballot.
They still have to go on the ballot.
Okay.
Voters still cast their vote, but it is an uncontested race, meaning that there is only 1 person that's on the ballot.
So what would you say the odds are that the person who's on the ballot, who happens to be our current mayor, Mayor Ed Honey, what are the odds that he would lose that election?
My official answer as the town clerk, who has to be the umpire and kind of stay neutral, is I'm not going to predict.
Very good. I like that answer. Very good. David Udall.
Do you have a need for speed? Whether you want to improve your race time or just have fun, the Run Marana series has something for everyone. Choose your challenge and sign up for one of the 5 races held throughout the year. Visit maranaz.gov/run to sign up. Your speed, your run, your town.
Don't let the heat of the moment catch you off guard. Northwest Fire District Public Education Team offers a range of programs including fire life safety community education, fire extinguisher training, car seat inspections, babysitting programs, senior safety talks, engine demonstrations, and station tours. Your well-being is our priority. For more information, visit nwfdaz.gov or call us at 520-887-1010. Together, we can create a safer and more informed community.
Are you splash savvy? In the event of a home drowning, you are the first responder. We'll walk you through the steps so you can prevent further complications until help arrives. Learn more from first responders at maranaaz.gov/splash savvy. We are first responders against drowning, and we are splash savvy.
All right, so the mayor is running uncontested, but we have 2 council seats. And how many people running for those 2 council seats?
So yes, we have 2 council seats, and we have 3 individuals that are running for those 2 council seats.
Okay. Now, somebody recently wrote in and asked, how come somebody isn't running against the mayor? Why is the mayor running unopposed? Well, what's the answer to that?
I don't know.
That's a great answer. We don't know. Nobody else applied. Nobody else expressed interest.
Yeah, no one expressed any interest, at least to our office. We never received any sort of inquiries or filings or anything of that nature for the office besides that one.
Fair enough. So if somebody is interested, the process is that when that time rolls around for the elections, they need to reach out and make contact with the clerk's office and express interest, and then you guys walk them through. My guess is, and I've actually know this for a fact because I've heard people say it, you guys actually walk them through the process of what they need to do.
We do, yes. We've prepared a candidate handbook that really tells them what they need to do kind of A to Z. It has citations to various election statutes and other things so that they can use those as a resource. Obviously, we can't, give specific advice for a campaign. We recommend they talk to either an attorney or an elections advisor or a campaign advisor for that type of guidance. But we do walk them through the process. We explain what's required. And then we give them that opportunity. State law gives them that opportunity. I believe this year it was March 2nd through April 1st was the nomination filing period, where they had to bring all of the required documentation to our office for evaluation.
Okay. And when you say nomination, that makes it sound like somebody else has to nominate you. That's not the case, is it?
No, not exactly.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on how you think about it. So the way that it works in Arizona is if you want to run for an elected office, you need to obtain enough signatures from your constituents. So it's kind of like they're nominating you.
Okay.
You got to have.
So the people that sign that form are saying, I would support this person being the mayor, or I would support this person being a council member.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, and how many signatures does somebody have to get in order to get on the ballot?
So there's a formula in state statute. It's a certain percentage. It's either 5% at the lower end or 10% on the higher end, I believe, of the highest vote getter of the last election. In concrete terms, this year it was, I think, 367 valid signatures at the lower end, and then they couldn't go beyond, I believe it was 735. So somewhere within that window, they have to get at least 367 signatures or up to 735 in order to make it onto the ballot.
Okay. Now, that doesn't sound like a huge number of signatures, but I got to believe that that's not super easy. Well, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the nature of the campaign. You can obtain signatures electronically now using the state's e-qual system. It makes it a little bit easier for both candidates and voters. Frankly, it makes it easier for the filing office because there's a lot of internal checks and balances within the system. But you certainly can go out and canvass neighborhoods, knock on doors. The traditional methods of getting signatures are still valid. And yes, it does take work. It takes work to get on the ballot. It takes a substantial effort in order to first get the signatures and then to convince voters that you're the person for the job. Okay.
So what would prevent me, besides my own personal integrity, of course, but what would prevent me from just going to a phone book, getting the form and just signing people's names on the form and turning it in with 367 signatures?
Yeah, so there are different checks and balances to protect against that.
Okay.
One of them is our office. So our review is, timeliness, completeness, making sure that everything is there. We look a little bit at substance, but not a lot. So, for example, if it's clear to me that there's a duplicate signature, or that someone just signed their signature on a bunch of different lines with different addresses, that's going to be a red flag. But generally speaking,
Becomes pretty obvious.
it becomes pretty obvious, yeah. But if it gets into the nuances of like, okay, whose handwriting is this? Did someone really go to great lengths to get different people to use different hands to write different things, or maybe even the same hand to write different addresses? That's where you're going to have a court challenge, and that's where you're going to bring in the handwriting experts. That's where litigation's involved. When I was at the Secretary of State's office, I had the chance to observe several election challenges, and they're pretty in-depth. I mean, they ask about every signature, and they have a handwriting expert testify about the signature. They testify to the address, whether the person's a qualified elector. There's a lot that goes into it. But there are several checks and balances. One of them is our office, but that's not the only one. There's also the court challenge process.
All right. So we've talked about what the elected officials are comprised of here for the town of Marana. We talked a little bit about the town clerk's involvement in that, and what that process looks like, what somebody has to do to get on the ballot, how often those elections occur. The people who run, do they have to declare a party affiliation, or how do we do that? And are they assigned by a district, the area they live in? How does that work?
Not in Marana. So first of all, we don't have district or ward elections in Marana. That's not how our elections work in the town.
Okay, so that's good to know, because, like, for example, City of Tucson has like Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, Ward 4, right? And the County Board of Supervisors has multiple districts that their superintendents are assigned from and represent. But you're saying that's not the way it is in town of Marana.
No, that's correct. Yeah, Marana does not operate that way. And our elections do involve, the primary election is actually the date where the election's usually decided. The general election is going to be more of like a runoff election for the town elections.
Okay, well, let's talk about that then. Let's talk about when somebody is actually elected, how they are elected in the primary versus at the regular election in November. How does somebody win during the primary? So they're not affiliated with a party, right? So they don't have to name a party affiliation. Is that part of the reason why they can be formally win the election in the primary?
Yeah, that's sort of part of it. So first of all, town elections are nonpartisan. So municipal elections, basically that means that on the paperwork, on the ballot, you're not going to have an individual's party affiliation next to the name of the candidate.
And that's true for all municipalities?
In Arizona.
Okay.
To my knowledge, yeah, at least all general law cities, and at least for sure, for the town of Marana, it is a nonpartisan election.
Okay.
So regarding the primary and how someone wins, it is a little bit of a complicated question, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to know the results on election night. You might, but it's not as clear as you would think it would be.
Okay.
State law actually does have a formula that they use. And bear with me, if it's okay with you, I'll describe the formula and then I'll give an example to kind of help break it down a little bit.
I would love that. I think that would be perfect.
Sure thing. So in order to know who wins on election night in a municipal election, you first have to add the total number of votes cast for all candidates on the ballot for the particular office in question. You need to divide that number by the number of seats to be filled for that office, and then divide that result by 2 and round it up to the highest whole number.
This is getting so complicated. I'm confused, man. Okay.
That's all right.
So when you went to law school, number one, you didn't know that you would ever be a town clerk. And number two, you didn't know that you were going to have to be a math whiz either.
Yes.
Right?
That is true.
But that's kind of what it's turned into. So,
bit.
Finish the equation here,
sure,
if you will.
You got it. So the end result of that formula equals the majority of the votes cast. Now, that's an important legal term. Candidates must reach the majority of votes cast number as a threshold to win the open seat. And if there's more than one candidate that reaches that threshold, the seat is determined by whoever has the highest number of votes above that threshold. So, for example, say you have 3 candidates for 2 open council member seats. We'll apply the formula to that. So you've got candidate Luke, candidate Jane, and candidate Frank.
I know all 3 of those people.
They're hypothetical examples here.
Hypothetical, of course, but I know all 3 of them.
So let's say there were 50,000 total votes cast for the 3 candidates for the 2 council member seats. So 50,000, you divide 50,000 by the 2 open council member seats, that gives you 25,000.
Okay. That's making it much simpler. I appreciate this breakdown.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Then you divide that 25,000 by 2 and round up, you get 12,500. So that's the magic number. That is the majority of the votes cast threshold that candidates must reach. So say Frank receives 13,000 votes. Luke receives 17,000 votes and Jane receives 20,000 votes. All of them reach that threshold, the magic number, 12,500. They all beat that. However, Jane and Luke, they got the most votes above the threshold. That means they are the ones that fill those 2 open seats.
Great explanation, David. Really appreciate the depth that you had there and the example that you used. I think that should make it really clear for all of our listeners, because it certainly made it clear to me. So I want to wrap up and talk a little bit about what happens if people don't get the requisite number of votes. So in your specific example, it was 12,500. So what if for the 2 seats that are available, only one person or none of the 2 or none of the 3 get the 12,500? They each get 11,200, 11,500, 11,700, but they don't hit that magic number. Then what?
Yeah, it's a great question. So that's where the runoff election comes into play. Our primary election, the state's consolidated primary election, is where we have kind of our election. And then if something like that happens, we go to a general election, which is essentially a runoff election. That is triggered, like you said, if no candidate reaches the threshold, that magic number of the majority of the votes cast for that particular office. In that scenario, and again, this might sound a little bit abstract, but I'll break it down in an example, continuing on with our previous example.
Perfect. Love it.
So in a runoff scenario, candidates not elected at the primary election equal in number to twice the number of remaining seats and who receive the highest number of votes at the primary election will be runoff candidates at the general election. I know that sounds a little bit convoluted.
It does. It does indeed.
But breaking it down, so
I think you lawyers like writing stuff so that it's very confusing. Because
we try to be accurate.
Yeah, accuracy. Yeah, I can see that it's accurate, but you have to have like a lawyer's degree to be able to translate it.
Yeah, sometimes it can be a little hard to decipher.
Job security, maybe.
Well, there's that. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Very technical. Yeah.
All right, so you're going to give us kind of a breakdown of what you just read and articulated.
So just to continue with the example, as you mentioned, so let's say Jane actually received 30,000 votes, so 10,000 more than she received previously. And let's say Luke instead received 11,000 votes and Frank received 9,000 votes. So in this case, because Jane was the only one who crossed that magic threshold, that magic number of 12,500 of the majority of the votes cast, she will fill one of the 2 vacant council member seats. But the other one is not filled at this election because they didn't reach that threshold.
Oh, wow.
As a result, a runoff will happen in November at the general election for both Luke and Frank, who were the highest vote getters. They're the only candidates in this case, the only other candidates. But they, although they didn't reach that majority of the votes cast threshold, because they were the highest vote getters left over, it's a runoff between those 2 to see who fills the vacant seat at the general election.
Okay. And do they have to get, then it's just a matter of who gets the most votes?
Pretty much.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, that's not as confusing as it sounds upon first listening, reading. Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. So anything else that we're missing in terms of things that would be important for our listeners to hear about, know about relative to our elections?
Just from our end, I would just say, if you set aside kind of maybe some of the frustrations of election season, all the ads and the signs and things that are everywhere, the campaigning, the politics. I personally love that, but sometimes that can be a little frustrating to some individuals.
Sure.
Setting all that aside, the election process itself is the foundation of our constitutional form of government. And so voter participation matters. Even though it's kind of a frustrating process sometimes, it matters a lot. And if you have questions or would like to even chat, feel free to reach out to our office. I'm happy to chat. You can visit our website at maranaaz.gov/elections. For more information, we try to put as many materials, as much information as we can, resources there for voters to take a look at so they aren't going into this election in the dark.
Excellent. Well, David, thank you so much for spending some time with me and for going to such great links in detail and explaining some of these somewhat obscure and the difficult things to articulate. So you did a great job. Really appreciate that. And to our listeners, you heard it here from David Udall. Your vote is your voice, so get out there and vote this coming election cycle. We'd love to see you out there, and so appreciate you joining us. Until next time. Submit your questions by visiting maranaaz.gov/realtalk, and we'll answer them right here. To receive notifications for new releases, remember to hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, remember to follow the town on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date on current news and events.